Hello guys, Oscar Hotel 8 Sierra Tango November here from Survival Tech Nord. Today I'm publishing the first of a series of how-to videos on the Super Antenna MP1 and MP1 DX Max. Like many of the antenna systems you see on the channel, the Super Antenna MP1 DX Max is another valuable tool in my ham radio rapid deployment toolbox. Now, although you've seen the Super Antenna on the channel before, I wanted to go ahead and make a series of videos to help kickstart your start with the Super Antenna MP1 DX Max. So stick with me a while and let's get started. So we're going to start off this series with the 4.2 to 4.9 MHz Mars and Civil Air Patrol configuration for the MP1 and MP1 DX Max. I think the first thing we'll do is look at the components we're going to use as well as the configuration options. So the first configuration choice is deciding whether we're going to use the SW1 Super Whip or the TW1 Telescopic Whip. The MP1 Super Slider is the core of our system, so we're going to be using that. And we're also going to need the MC80 Super Coil. If you'd like to simultaneously use VHF with this antenna configuration, you'll need the MC2 Superplexer. If not, you'll go ahead and use the ER1 extension rods. We're also going to need a counterpoise for this configuration, so go ahead and grab the Micromeo 8075. Finally, you're going to have to decide on a tripod. In my case, I have two options, the TM1 low-profile tripod and the TM4 SuperPod. Assembly is pretty straightforward, so we'll start it off by setting up the tripod. Since I'm here in the deep snow, I'm going to go ahead and use the optional Tango Mic 4 SuperPod. It can be set up in 3 different heights, but I'm going to set it up at its highest level. In hindsight, maybe it is better to leave the tripod at one of the lower levels while setting up the antenna. Now we're going to collect all the components that we need to assemble the antenna system and put those together. We'll start with the MC80. I've already installed the ER1 extension rods underneath the MP1. For this configuration, we're actually going to put the MC80 on top of the MP1. So go ahead and screw that MC80 down onto the MP1 until it seats nicely. Don't forget to make sure that there's no debris in between the MC80 and the MP1. Now we can install the whip on top of the MC80. I've decided to use the Sierra Whiskey 1 Super Whip. Go ahead and install your whip on top of the MC80. And just as between the MC80 and MP1, ensure there's no debris and give it a snug fit. Now you have a chance to see what the entire system looks like when it's assembled. So we have the Sierra Whiskey 1, we have the MC80, MP1, ER1, and a second ER1. If you have difficulty with the assembly, you might find it easier to do it from bottom to top with your ER1s, your MC1, your MC80, and then your whip. I forgot to mention earlier that I'm using the UM3 mount for the TM4 SuperPod. But you could also use any of the mounts with 3/8 hardpoint. So go ahead and screw down the antenna assembly into the UM3 on the tripod. And once it's seated, go back and check each joint in the antenna assembly. Now we can take a step back and look at the entire system as it is assembled. If you're happy with your work, we can go ahead and move on to the next steps. Now it's time to install the Micromeo 8075 radial. Go ahead and remove it from the package, remove the twist ties keeping it together, and be careful not to allow the radio to unwind. The Micromeo 8075 has an unterminated end and a second end with a type of push-on friction connector. We will attach the connector to the UM3 on the tripod, Then start to uncoil the radial. In this example, we're going to lay the radial out along the ground. If you have the means to do so, you could also elevate the radial somewhat above the ground. Now that I'm done laying out the radial, I'll head back to the TM4 and use the go bag to add ballast to the hook on the bottom of the tripod. So now we're going to tune the antenna for best SWR. There's a couple of different ways to achieve this, and I'll show you both. Super Antenna has a conversion chart on the application notes section of its website. We can use this conversion chart to edit our own frequency guide, making marks to signify tuning areas along the band. That's one way. I'm also going to edit my own frequency guide. However, I'm going to collect the marks across the band using my SWR meter. Loading each of those points into the SWR meter, I find best SWR for that referenced frequency. Now I make a mark on the frequency guide which references the point on the super slider, matching the frequency I want. We repeat that process until we have all of the frequency reference points between 4.2 and 4.9 megahertz. If you can't get your SWR down low enough, that usually means your counterpoise or radial wire is too long. A quick remedy for this is to reduce the length of the radial. I do this by rewinding the radial and checking my SWR meter until I find or achieve lowest SWR. Once I found lowest SWR, I go back and mark my frequency guide. At this point, your MP1 is set up for 4.2 to 4.9 megahertz and ready to use. And that brings us to the end of the video. If you enjoyed this video, found it useful or entertaining, and like to see more videos like it, consider leaving a thumbs up and a comment. And finally, you can share this video with someone or someplace where other operators might enjoy it. Rock and roll, guys. Thanks for watching. Ciao.